Alrighty everyone, welcome back. We are now getting closer to the middle point of April of 2023, and ever since, of course, the last chapter of The Mandalorian Season 3, fans are now awaiting the final chapter for this particular season that's going to wrap up everything until we get to see Season 4 by sometime in 2024, or maybe even 25 if there's some delays or setbacks. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, there's a lot of things happening between George, John, and Dave in order to really get the ball rolling with Star Wars again. A lot of this is going to be done through the Ahsoka Tano series, really retelling aspects of Heir to the Empire, as well as, really borrowing a lot of elements from the entire Thrawn trilogy. But that brings us to exactly what Kathleen Kennedy recently did to George Lucas, and it's not that big of a surprise because she's always doing terrible things to George behind his back, really backstabbing the guy and betraying the father of the franchise that really ignited this fan base, right? So, when we look at stuff like this, alright, we know that Kathleen Kennedy has some kind of agenda with the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. She even admitted it herself a couple of days ago that these two projects, which she has a lot of input on, is all about shifting away from the fan expectations of Star Wars and that vision or philosophy of George Lucas. She is moving away from all of that and focusing on something else. Now, given that The Acolyte was really heavily inspired by The Matrix, and given that Carrie-Anne Moss is also in the show, I'm not quite sure if that's a coincidence or not, but Kathleen Kennedy did say that she was inspired from The Matrix to kind of mix Star Wars with martial arts and stuff like that. So, moving on to the next big thing here, this is where things begin to escalate, is that given that multiple Star Wars projects are now in the works by John and Dave, it's noted, however, that recently Kathleen Kennedy betrayed George Lucas yet again in one of her recent acts in one of the upcoming Star Wars projects. Now, it's noted that initially both Kennedy and Lucas had agreed on a specific scene to be told that was dearly, of course, special to George, that was supposed to be used as a big moment in the show that served as a flash forward. This moment involved the events during the events of The Phantom Menace, showcasing the Jedi Council, including characters like Yoda and even the return of Mace Windu, that was going to be done in a very special way. This was all part of the original script of The Acolyte and was all set and ready to go for filming before principal photography even started. However, recently Kennedy decided to pull and cancel the entire sequence, excluding both Mace Windu and Yoda cameos completely. The plan was for Yoda to return in his CG form, again, but in a more perfected manner, and Mace Windu was going to return, but he was going to have a hood over his head to keep his cameo a bit mysterious in one of the special scenes, with Yoda talking about the sense of a Dark Lord rising. Now, let me just stop right here for 1 second. Now, The Acolyte, originally in the first chapter, was going to have a lot of flash forwards, showing us the events after the Sith overtake parts of the Jedi Council, alright? Or the Acolyte, if you will. The thing that I find so very terrible about this is the fact that Kennedy went out of her way to really exclude these legendary characters like Mace and Yoda. And though it's not clear, we're not quite sure if Samuel L. Jackson was involved, I highly doubt that, or was in the talks for this actual project. I don't believe he was, but they did keep his cameo a bit of a mystery. It was Mace Windu, but he had a hood over his head, he had a couple lines of dialogue with Yoda. He was going to be talking about the sense or the presence of an emerging dark side power, kind of lending itself to showcasing how the Sith were successful in infiltrating the Jedi Order somehow, and then jumping back to present time, telling you the story about the Acolyte. That's basically the original format that Kennedy wanted to go with. Now that that's all been excluded, that was George Lucas's big scene for the Acolyte series that was supposed to be, and she just destroyed it. She just took it out, and that was all there was to it. Now, this is yet more proof and more of a greater example that she does not care about the fans, she does not care about you, and it does not seem like she really cares about the hardcore fan base. Even she openly said this like 3 days ago during Celebration, that what she's working on, what she is really involved with when it comes to shows like Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, it's really about attracting new fans, how they can attract a new fan base. And not in one sentence did she talk about the hardcore fans, or the loyal fans, or fans of what George brought to this world. Nothing like that. It was all about just attracting new fans to fit her own agenda. That's basically what it's coming down to. Now, on to the next thing, alright? Because it's more to the story than this, is that the scene was going to be a love letter to the prequel trilogy fans, and Kennedy and Lucas even shook hands on this sequence many months ago that was going to explore different parts of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant as well that have never before been seen. The main reason why Kennedy decided to cancel the scene altogether was that she is creating retcons toward the prequel trilogy movies entirely that's going to be considered a very controversial piece for fans. Additionally, Kennedy also excluded any appearances of Yoda from the Acolyte that Lucas had planned with Kathy, and everything that they agreed on has now been broken. This comes as Kennedy's latest attempt to retcon pieces of the prequels that will be considered controversial to the fandom. Now again, the fact that they wanted to explore all of the different aspects of the prequel trilogy and everything related to the prequel trilogy lore, the Jedi Council, the Jedi Temple, and stuff like that in a flash-forward scene, that would have been very special to us, and especially to the creators, right? And I think that when you look at stuff like that, the fact that Kennedy excludes special moments like this, it is beginning to really spill through right now exactly what Kennedy is all about. I mean, she's been on numerous amounts of interviews during and after Celebration on video, and she has this look in her eyes. There's something going on with her. I don't know what it is. It's probably because she knows that Disney's trying to fire her by this August. Something's going on with her in her mind. When she's giving these interviews, she's got this new kind of attitude. She seems very defensive. Almost like she's being a little passive-aggressive at times. There's some elements of that in her when she talks lately. So, there's something going on with Kathleen Kennedy. She obviously has some kind of personal issue with George that we may or may never learn about, but there is something there. We already know that George does not like Kathleen Kennedy. It's why he did not appear at the world premiere of Episode 9. He absolutely refused to go after Kennedy cut out all of his scenes that he helped J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio with. Literally, that's exactly what Kennedy did. She wanted no part of George, she had a change of heart, and said, let's just exclude all of his work now, because this is not for Star Wars. And basically, that's what she always does. She flip-flops. So, it does get tiresome, with Kathleen Kennedy just running into things and really just changing things and betraying people like George. It's a non-stop vicious cycle, and Disney realizes this, and this is why they have to get her out. So anyways, guys, I would love to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon we hear